Hi there, fellow ants keepers. Welcome back to another Ants Subong video. This week we will dive into the life of the Carebara ant species, mainly during the founding stages. I will also talk about some basics of keeping this ant species for those who are interested. The Carebara species is known for their polymorphism, meaning having the most differences between the minor and the major workers. There are multiple castes in the colony, which allows them to focus on a broad array of duties. They are highly aggressive ants and do not run away if disturbed. They will attack anything that is in their path. They form a long food hunting trail. You should be careful of where you step. They are fond of climbing up on your feet in a matter of seconds and inflicting painful bites. You might want to avoid being bitten by their supermajors. It is known to pierce through human skin. The Carebara supermajor does not stand on a spot to guard, unlike what you would see in army ants. In fact, the supermajor hunt and raids together. They are very efficient in bringing and breaking down unfortunate preys. They also act as a means of transport for the smaller worker ants, as they would hitch rides on the back of the supermajor. Here, we have a founding stage of a Carebara queen. I caught a few of these queens during their nuptial flights. Male alates will mate with an alate queen even if she is already on the ground. During this catch, I had introduced a few male alates into containers to ensure her fertility. The males are then removed the next day. As she begins the egg-laying process, the posture of the queen changes. It enables her to tend to her broods while clutching on them, as she continuously increases the brood mass. If the brood mass falls off, she will pick it up. How is she able to hold on to the brood pile? By that fine hair that covers her gaster. It acts like extended little hands. It is amazing how she can balance and tend to the giant pile of eggs just on her gaster. Usually within 30 days, she will amass up to 10 to 15 workers on her first unleash. In 2 to 3 days, you will have around 30 to 40 workers. The worker ants you see here are nanitics. They are the smallest caste in this Carebara ant species. Within a week, the first major had already appeared. Do keep in mind that I have not fed anything to them aside from a small drop of sugar water. In the weeks to come, the colony will need a high amount of nutrition. This growth speed clearly requires a lot of energy. In the wild, Carebara ant will forage for small nuts and seeds, but not as their main staple diet. They only feed on nuts and seeds if there is a low yield of bug insects during the drier season. They need to compensate for the loss of protein from the base insect diet, and with seeds to cater for the huge colony diet. You can give dry seeds to your own colony, but I personally prefer not to. Cleaning the nest is really a pain. You will end up losing many ants during the cleaning process. Yes, you can pick them up one by one, but they are not a Campanota size ants. If you know what I mean. You can find a Carebara nuptial flight after a thunderstorm. If you live in a tropical country as I do, finding them is not an issue. Light rain or shower doesn't really drive them out of the nest. When they do fly, it's actually visible from some distance away. If you do find multiple queens, keep them in separate containers. I said this because, although they are polygynous, the queen does not really like close quarters with another queen. I have learnt this the hard way during my early days of ant hunting. Most of you will be thinking, let's put multiple queens in and form a super colony. Establishing a big colony will be a breeze. That was not what it seemed. In my case, I would discover the 11 queens that I have kept together would end up in mutilation. When I got home that night, I could see bits and pieces of wings and parts of antenna on the bottom of the container. My initial thought was that during the bike ride home, I had somehow stressed them out from the rough ride. I immediately changed the catch container to a bigger nest, one that I would put substrate in. It was a foot-long container, so I left them there to allow them to dig and perhaps make an egg-laying chamber for themselves. I had an idea to get a proper nest ready while they stay there temporarily for a few days. I believe it only took about a week when I found that half of the queens I got from the nuptial flight had no legs left on them at all. They are still alive, just unable to walk. The cut on the legs are very precise, and above the last joint section close to the body. I also noticed the amputated queens are in a pile like how ants would treat their garbage. I was in a state of shock. I remembered I even removed the amputated queens out and viewed them in a magnifying glass and compared them to the ones which are fully intact to make sure they are of the same Carebara species. They all looked the same, and only then I realized that some of them had been mutilating other queens. I am thinking that perhaps the ones which have no legs are unfertilized, or the 5 that remained were the bullish queen type. So here I was pondering, why are they saying Carebara are polygynous but still amputate the others? I soon came to a half-baked conclusion that the 5 Carebara queens that remained were the dominant queen from the same colony I caught during the nuptial flight. Whereby, the others that got amputated are from another colony. It also meant that at that time for me, it was the end of the mutilation story. Boy, I was so wrong. Being the first Carebara ant colony I succeeded in keeping, led me to another discovery. When workers do emerge from the multiple egg-laying queens, the workers will kill off the weaker queens. At the end of the day, you will only end up with a single most dominant egg-laying queen in the colony. It is sad but true from my experience in keeping them. I am not saying that this will happen to everyone, it is based on my experience, and it might just be how the ants behave in the environment I kept them in. If you have similar experiences, do share them in the comments below. On the other hand, I wish to know if giving an established colony a fertile Carebara queen is possible. I want to know if they would adopt a new queen into the colony. Do share your experiences in the comments as well. If you do not have a Carebara nuptial in your area, but you want to see a queen, the best bet is to find them in a wide field shaded with big trees. I always get to see queens in my area, and they are always surrounded by many workers for protection. Sometimes I mistook a swarm of ants over small food, but in fact they are swarming on a queen. The queen will usually come up from the ground after a heavy downpour. I do not recommend capturing established colonies in the wild as they will have parasites. Also, they might not be able to adjust to the indoors environment. This will be the first protein I have given them, a fresh pre-killed superworm. At first, they don't seem interested. Perhaps it's the first time they have ever tasted and come across a delicious food. I am not too worried, I know for sure they will ask more of it sooner or later. Carebara ants are good hunters. They have the numbers and speed, swarming a prey will definitely spell death to the insects. They will also attack small reptiles that come across its path. A large swarm will be able to take down a gecko, especially with the super majors which are able to hold down its prey with much force. I get this question a lot, are they easy to keep? My answer is always, I had a huge colony before, but I had to give it up. They are the type of ants which you need to give full attention to the environmental aspect of the nest. Carebara ants needs a moist setup, it is so important that a dry nest will often kill many of them. So we always find ways to keep the nest moist. I used to keep this species outside my home, and in a dry month, the nest will go completely dry within a day. That is a task you need to be doing to ensure it stays moist. Carebara ant live mostly in the ground. If you want to keep these ants you will need a substrate setup. They will need digging space and to make nesting chambers within the substrate. Do moist the substrate once in a while so that it doesn't become dry and crumbly. You don't have to make a beautiful setup when keeping Carebara ants. I will suggest a bare nest, perhaps 1 or 2 big rocks. They will change the outlook of the nest from their substrate. Digging anything that is above the substrate either collapses under their own weight or is covered by substrate. Even plants cannot survive as they can hollow out the soil which the plant roots need. Another task is waste management. They leave behind heaps of food waste in the nest, and they are not exactly tidy housekeepers. Removing the garbage they left behind was a huge pain in the butt. It always ended up with a few ants being sacrificed. There was no way around it. Combining with the moist substrate, mold and fungal outbreak is a bane. This made the substrate super reactive to organic matter, where it only takes a day for the fungus to grow. Another reason why they are hard to keep is preventing them from escaping. Yes, the anti-escape barrier does work in the beginning, but as time passes, it will wear off. This is the time they will be making the escape. The ants are always surveying the nest to look for a potential weak spot. You could reapply the anti-escape barrier, but remember to give them good ventilation, especially using powder barrier. Applying fresh powder barrier will certainly kill a few ants on the spot, and if you are not careful, the whole colony could receive alcohol poisoning. This ant species which you have been looking at for the past few minutes is called Carebara affinis. It is a slightly smaller species than the common Carebara diversa, about 16 mm to 17 mm. The workers are lighter in color but much darker at their heads. They are about 2 to 2.5 mm in length. Do keep in mind that these are nanitic workers. Some worker caste will grow to fire ants' worker size. This particular queen has her wings still attached. The workers are now busy nibbling off the wings as a food source. Most of the workers you see here have just hatched. They still have a translucent gaster, and will turn darker once their body hardened. This test tube setup used to have a substrate enclosed nest. Ever since the first batch of workers arrived, I removed the old stale substrate and replaced it with another soft medium, so that it would make delivery a little safer. I hope I have shared enough information here for you to understand the species better. I am not a professional and most descriptions here are based on my experience alone. I am happy that I can share these to my fellow ant keepers, and surely it will ease some of your doubts about keeping this species. Again, thank you for watching, and Subong.